Getting the devotee to ring the bell in the dome on time was a major effort for Srila Prabhupada, as was getting them to ring the bell in the temple room at all. His desire was that the bell in the temple dome should sound the hour and ring once every half hour. The grounds watchman, or chowkidar, was supposed to do it, and Gunanava was to see that he did, but for weeks there were problems, especially during the hours of the night when the chowkidar tended to fall asleep. For Srila Prabhupada, the undependable bell ringing revealed much about the overall temple management in Vrindavan. He made it clear, I am judging the management of this temple by the ringing of the bell. If the night watchman was sleeping, and if the temple leaders could not execute a simple order, how would the temple and guest house, with all their complexities, operate smoothly? Akshayananda Swami and Gunanava sometimes thought they would never solve the problem of the bells, especially since they already had so many other things to do. But Srila Prabhupada was relentless. Whenever the bell missed by a few minutes, the mountain was wrong. During the night, he was usually the only one sleeping, so he would wake Akshayananda or others and reprimand them if the bell failed. One night at midnight, he woke Hari Kesh, his travelling secretary. Do you hear that? Demanded Srila Prabhupada. Saying that the whole of Vrindavan, they're looking at this Krishna Balaram Mandir and the Western devotees, and they want to say, that we're together, we're on the ball. So if it's all over the place, then we kind of lose our credibility, our Dham credibility. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 8, the character of Bharat Maharaj, and its text 24 first, and then we'll do 25. Maharaj Bharat continued to speak like a madman. Seeing above his head the dark marks on the rising moon, which resembled a deer, he said, Can it be that the moon, who is so kind to an unhappy man, might also be kind upon my deer, knowing that it has strayed from home and has become motherless? This moon has given the deer shelter near itself just to protect it from the fearful attacks of a lion. Text 25. So I'll run through the Sanskrit. Kim Vatmacha Vishlesh Dvara Tavag Dahana Sikalabhya Upatabhyamana Hridaya Stala Nilakamam Upashtrata Mrigitanayam Shishra Santanugraga Gunita Nija Vandana Salikamritamaya Gabastibi Swadayatiticha. Responsively, please. Kimba, or it may be, Atmaja, from the sun. Vishlesha, because of separation. Dvara, the heat. Davadahana, of the forest fire. Shikabi, by the flames. Upatabhyamana, being burned. Hridaya, the heart. Stalanalinikam, compared to a red lotus flower. Mam, unto me. Upashtramigitanayam, to whom the son of the deer was submissive. Shishishanta, which is so peaceful and cool. Anuraga, out of love. Gunita, flowing. Nijavadana salila, the water from its mouth. Amritamaya, as good as nectar. Gabastabi, by the rays of the moon. Swadayati is giving me pleasure. Iti, thus. Cha, and. Translation. After perceiving the moonshine, Maharaj Bharat continued speaking like a crazy person. He said, "The dear sun was so submissive and dear to me that due to its separation, I am feeling separation from my own sun. Due to the burning fever of this separation, I am suffering as if inflamed by a forest fire. My heart, which is like the lily of the land, is now burning. Seeing me so distressed, the moon is certainly splashing its shiny nectar upon me, just as a friend throws water on another friend who has a high fever. In this way, the moon is bringing me happiness." Purport Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. According to the Ayurvedic treatment, it is said that if one has a high fever, someone should splash him with water after gargling this water. In this way, the fever subsides. Although Bharat Maharaj was very aggrieved due to the separation of his so-called son, the deer, he thought that the moon was splashing gargled water on him from its mouth, and that this water would subdue his high fever, which was raging due to separation from the deer. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Malitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So there's a word used in the Sanskrit of the verse, which is referring to the forest fire, Dava Dahana. So we sing in the morning, Samsara Dava Nalalila Loka. So it's the forest fire of repeated birth and death. So that's the fire of material existence. And it's interesting, isn't it, that you splash, if someone has a high fever, you splash him with water after gargling the water. I don't know, would you put that back in the cup after you'd gargled it, or just gargle it straight from your mouth onto the person with the fever?
Previous person's gargled it, this ill has to gargle it, right?
Yeah, because it wouldn't be pretty moody if someone else was doing it to you. I suppose you do it to yourself. So that's an Ayurvedic. So you couldn't have invented that, could you? That's why we say the Vedic. You can't. People would say, well, I don't know whether I believe all these stories in the Srimad Bhagavatam about Varaha and Kurma, but you couldn't really make them up, could you? Even if you tried. You look at what people try to make up, Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. It doesn't come close, does it, to on a cosmological level. So Maharaj Bharat is referred to as crazy. Did anyone notice the Sanskrit word for crazy? It's usually pagal, isn't it? I don't see it in the word for word. Anyway, he became crazy. Maharaj continued to speak. He was speaking like a crazy person because now he was thinking that the deer was his son. So he was very aggrieved due to separation of his so-called son, the deer. It's funny, isn't it, because Maharaj Bharat did have sons, but he didn't have a problem leaving his actual sons. But now his adopted son, he had more attachment for his adopted, and it wasn't even a human, it was a deer. He had more attachment for that than he'd had for his son or wives or anything else. And so he's very aggrieved due to separation from the deer. So isn't it interesting when we look at if we break down what is happiness and what is unhappiness, what causes a person to become unhappy? Is everyone feeling happy right now, or is anyone feeling unhappy? Anyway, you can think for yourself, why am I feeling unhappy? What is it that I would like to have that I don't have that would make me feel happy? They say there's two types of people, the haves and the bees. The haves will be happy when they have this, and the bees will be happy when they be like this. So the bee person thinks, I'm not very happy, I need to be more whatever, you know, and then I'll be happy. And the have person thinks, I will be happy once I have this, and therefore you can't expect me right now to be happy. Anyway, in this case, Maharaj Bharat is illustrating a person who would be happy if he had the deer. If the deer was to come back, then he would be happy. If not, then he's not going to be happy. So what causes unhappiness is attachment to things which are temporary. We have a status quo, and everything has to stay the same. And of course, nothing can stay the same. Bhaktivinoda Prabhu was making a nice point. I was speaking to him the other day on the phone, and he was saying, people are wanting things back to normal. He said, I don't think things were that great anyway when they were normal. He didn't think things were that great even when they were normal. So it's the nature of nostalgia, isn't it? You know, everybody hates Ted, and then one day Ted slips on a banana skin, bangs his head into a lamppost, and that's the end of Ted. And then everyone's sitting there, he was a great guy, Ted. And they're all kind of nostalgic, you know, about it. And everyone's looking back now thinking, God, if only things could be normal. I'd love to be able to go into Tesco's and bump into somebody without having to worry about it, you know. Or run down the street without a mask on. But people were doing that all the time before, and they were miserable as anything. They were bumping into each other into Tesco's like mad. Black Friday, right? There wasn't much distancing going on Black Friday. You've seen the video. There's a video of these people on Black Friday in a hi-fi store, and it's chaos. And you've got these guys that there's like just one or two of them, and there's about 500 people in the shop, and they're trying to say, calm down. And there's this one lady, she's got hold of a television, a massive, probably a television she'd never ever be able to afford in her life, you know, and it's suddenly slashed by 70%, so she's got hold of it, she's hanging on like dear life, you know. And someone else thought that they'd saw it first, so she's got the other end, you know, and they actually break the TV, it's one of these widescreen, and they can't be that, because they made them that thin, you know. And then neither of them wants the telly, you know, they chuck it to the side, and they just start having a fisticuff. You know? So there wasn't much social distancing going on there, and neither of them had to wear masks, but they weren't very happy, were they? So you get tricked into thinking, well, I'll be happy once I can have things the way they used to be, but you won't be. You're just getting tricked. And so the deer comes back, and he's happy for a little period of time, but then eventually he'll realize at the end of his life that he's blown it, so he won't be that happy. So we can think for ourselves, okay, so because it's up to ourselves how we can become happy. We can't blame anybody else, because that's the mentality of have. If I could just have people around me that were nice, then I'd be okay, you know. Then I'd be happy. We have to look at ourselves and blame ourselves for why we're not happy. Okay, why am I not happy? I could say it's because we don't get as much sunshine. If I was in Hawaii, then I would be really happy, you know. And the people in Hawaii, they're like sweating. You know, if you're ever in a hot country, tropical country, one thing you notice is you can't get clean. If you notice when you're in India, you have a shower, 5 minutes later, it's this kind of like greasy thing that comes out with the sweat, and you can't really get that clean, you know. And after a while you're thinking, if I could just go to a cold place and just get clean. So people in Hawaii are thinking, if I could just be in Scotland for 5 minutes and just roll in the snow, I would be so happy. So they're tricked as well, you see. They're tricked into thinking, I'll be happy once I have this. And then what's even worse is, what if you want to be happy and you think, if I had this, and you know there's no chance you can have it, then you've shot yourself in the foot before you've even started. I would only be happy if I won the lottery and had £100 million. If I had that, then I'd be happy. So then that's it. Game over. Because there's no chance you're going to get that. They say there's more chance of dying than winning the lottery. There was one woman, she did die because she'd won the lottery. Well, actually, she didn't win it because she gave the pound to her son, and he got a can of Coca-Cola. At that time, I think it was 40p for the Coca-Cola. He gave her the 60p change. I think it's £2 now for lottery, but at that time it was £1 for a lottery ticket. And she used to use the same numbers every time, you see. So her number came up. And when she saw it, she had a heart attack and died. Sad, really. Funny how humour works, isn't it? But it's very sad, really, that she was so attached. And then if she hadn't have died, you can imagine for the rest of her life, she would have had quite a weight on her shoulders, knowing all the time, if she hadn't have got that Coca-Cola, she'd have been giving her grandson a hard time as well, probably. So for us it's great because we can open things up and say, well, it's karma. We can take things a lot easier on the chin. We can say, yeah, well, that's it. Then I just tatenu kampam. Should have been a lot worse, actually. You could think of so many things that could be a lot worse, and you could look at it like that, I could have slipped on a banana skin and banged my head and been blind for the rest of my life, and that never happened to me, so, wow, I'm really lucky in one sense. So we can turn things around like that because we have that philosophy. And we have a lot more tools at our disposal, how we can deal with being something better and not having to worry so much with attachments that are going on around us, In fact, we're cultivating detachment to be in a situation where there's things around you and people around you and stuff around you, and at the same time cultivating detachment at the same time. So how do we do that? Anybody have any good techniques they'd like to share of how they cultivate detachment while being in the midst of so many sense objects?
You need to find something better, because the soul is looking for happiness, so you can't give up anything unless you find something better.
Yeah.
You can do it temporarily,
Yeah.
but then eventually you either go back to the same thing, or you find another thing which is also not giving you
Yeah.
fulfillment.
Yeah, that's a nice way of looking at it. To get something better, Krishna says, Tad vidyad atmano mayam. He says, learn that this is my illusory energy. If it's not in relation to me, then it's my illusory energy. So if you're attached to things which are illusory, then tad vidyad is knowledge. So if you can cultivate knowledge, you can become detached. It's like if you're in a desert and you're really attached to a mirage and you're running after the mirage, and you're on your last legs, you've been in the desert for 3 days, you've not had a drop of water, you've hardly got any strength left, and you see a mirage and you start running, and you're using that last little spurt of energy, and somebody says, where are you going? I can see water, I can see. And then you say, well, actually, no, it's a mirage, and I'll show you. Have a look through these binoculars. See, there's no lake, there's no... So immediately you're detached, because you have the knowledge to know that what you thought it was isn't what it is. So you can cultivate that. You can tad vidyad atmano mayam. You can cultivate. You can learn this is an illusion. Being attached to a deer is an illusion. Being attached to anything in the material world that's temporary is illusory. Because the nature of attachment is you want it forever. So the only thing you'll get forever is a relationship with Krishna. So get attached to Krishna. Everything else is some kind of rubbishy illusion. Whatever it is,
Some nice quote that I just came across in Satyananda Swami Living Name. It says, though as soon as we try to think about Krishna as someone who we need, we will find other concerns flood into our heart, longings for partners, grand homes, gadgets, money, fame, adoration, prestige, and luxury, etc. torment us our whole lives. But if we churn all these desires to their core, we will find under the surface is the need for love, shelter, stability, appreciation, comfort, safety, etc. And underneath these is our true need for Krishna. He is the only one who can satisfy all these needs. In fact, it is our primeval longing for Him that has become substituted for these lesser superficial things.
And that's referred to by Marshall Rosenberg as tragic expressions of unmet needs. So if a person comes up to you and says, "You big fat pig, I wanted more halava this morning." So it's a tragic expression of an unmet need because his need. So what is his need? He's calling you a fat pig. Why is he calling you a fat pig? Because maybe he saw that you kept the halava for yourself. You just gave him a little bit, and then you sat down. And you had this massive plate of halava, and you only got a little bit. So, and initially you could think, "Who are you calling a fat pig?" You know. Of course, you would be fatter than him if you'd had 5 times as much halava, but it's a tragic expression of an unmet need because his real need is he needed you to show him some love and affection and some respect, and he didn't get that. So when someone kicks off at you and insults you, you could look beyond the peripheral and look deeper and think, okay, this person is very upset. Why is he upset? He's upset. Maybe he's upset because he's feeling a little frightened, a little frustrated, a little disrespected. They say that a person will never be angry if he can come in contact with the need that is being unmet. Generally what happens is when you come in contact with the need that is being unmet, you don't become angry, you become sad. Anger is a very superficial thing. If you can go a little bit deeper, you'll see the anger is a secondary emotion. And the original emotion is something to do with sadness or insecurity or fear. Fear is a big need, because we're afraid of so many things. And then that fear translates as being insulting or being angry or so many things. But really what it is, we're afraid because we're not going to get respected enough, that we're not getting enough recognition. We're afraid that we're not going to be appreciated. These are unmet needs. So what Satyanandan Swami is saying is, all these peripheral things that we get caught up with, it's tragic because we'll miss the boat because we've not identified what our real need is in the first place. And so therefore it won't translate, we won't be able to. The more we can become aware of what our needs are and also become compassionate to other people's needs, try and hear what's going on here. The person seems very angry at me, rather than me just fighting back, which is actually a distraction. Let me think, okay, why is he angry? He's angry because he's feeling maybe afraid, like Srila Prabhupada was angry because the bell wasn't being rung. But why was he angry really? He was angry because he was afraid that the Krishna Balaram Mandir was not going to be taken seriously. And his whole endeavour, it was a huge endeavour to establish that in the first place. It was all going to go to waste. And he'd seen how it had happened in his spiritual master's mission, that they'd got facility, and that hadn't actually been a help. It'd been an impediment, a hindrance. So Prabhupada didn't want that to happen with the Krishna Balaram Mandir. So he became angry because underneath it was the fear that this was not going to be kept together nicely, it wasn't going to be organized nicely, managed nicely. So that helps you to fulfill your needs, because believe it or not, and get ready for this one, everyone, wakey for this one. This one could be life-changing. Believe it or not, your need, one of your primary needs, is to fulfill other people's needs. And we think there's a stage, Marshall Rosenberg calls the obnoxious stage, which is where you stop allowing other people to force you to do things and kind of, dropping things on you and dumping things on you. You think, I'm not going to have this anymore. This is what I'm doing. This is it, and that's it. But you go beyond that stage, you become interdependent, where you realize that to live like that, where you don't care about anybody else, you're just going to care about yourself, you actually deny yourself. A need becomes unfulfilled, which is your need to feel useful and loved and appreciated. And that will only happen if, in amongst the people that you associate with, you're fulfilling their needs, finding out what it is they want, bringing them a gift, listening to their problems, trying to give them some good advice, trying to help them, sharing a meal with them, serving them the food, preparing the food. This is a need that you have to experience. Because love is a two-way street. You can't just be, okay, it's all for me, and to you, because then love, you close the street down, no love's going to come out from you. So you also close the street the other way as well. No love can come in for you, because if you're not going to give any love out, how can you expect any love to come back? How can people love you if you are unloving and uncaring? If you're insensitive and selfish, how can you expect people to warm up? Oh, here he comes. Oh, here's selfish Joe. Oh, he's a great guy. He's completely ignores you and doesn't do anything you want, you know, and he doesn't care about you at all. He's a great guy. Let's bring him over and have a chat with him, you know. Everyone will be like, that's selfish Joe, pretend you're on your phone. Right? Nobody's interested in getting him into anything with selfish Joe. He's just in it for himself. Everyone's like, give him a wide berth, you know. And his need, selfish Joe's need, is to be around people that love him and think he's great. He's only going to get that if he's prepared to fulfill their needs, find out what it is they want and try and help them, you know. And it doesn't have to be transactional. Well, I'll be nice to him if he's nice to me. If he's not, then that's fine, you know. But you have to be proactive, so you have to initiate. Okay, well, he's not very nice to me. Maybe he had a hard upbringing, you know. Maybe his dad used to beat him, or whatever it was. So let me give him some affection, some attention, some help. And then the person will respond, you know. Oh, you're my only friend. I was going around these businesses once, and there was this guy selling big cars in Batley, which is just outside Leeds. And he was going to call it Big Toys for Big Boys, but he thought that would maybe lose the prestige a little bit. So he called it like this fancy name anyway, you know. And anyway, I went into his office, and he ran up to the door and locked the door and pulled the shutters down and took all the phones off the hook. He said, Tony, sit down here, sit down. I've just found my wife kissing the karate instructor. What should I do? So he was trying to, you know, there was he had so many friends, but he was no one he could say anything to, you know. I was thinking, wow, I'm his only friend. At least I would reveal that to anyway. And he had 2 girls, so he wasn't sure what to do, you know. Anyway, so that's why we need relationships, loving relationships, so that we can reveal our hearts. If you can't reveal your heart, they say a father can have 10 sons, but he only trusts one. He loves all 10, but he only trusts one. Very rare to have a relationship with somebody you can trust. It's easier to love people than it is to trust people, actually. When you trust somebody and you give your heart to them and you reveal everything, you spill the beans, everything comes out. That's the last thing that Maya wants you to do. Maya wants you to keep your secrets in your closet, hidden away, buried deep in your catacombs, and not revealed, not exposed to the daylight, because she knows that when your problem is shared, it's halved, at least halved. When you realize that people still like you, even though they know these things about you, they like you for who you are. They like you for being genuine, for being real. People like that more than being a pretend nice guy or whatever, you know. But to find somebody that you can trust, that's the challenge. Because if you can, then you'll make your life a lot easier by unloading all those things, and you'll become relieved of them as well. Actually, you become free of them by revealing them, and that's why they don't want you to reveal them, because then you'll get rid of them. You see, you'll flush them out. And the onus is on us to do that. We don't have so much time left. Time is ticking away. I was looking at the second hand the other day, and it was going around. It's going so fast, that second hand. So fast, and everything behind it, you'll never get back. It's eating away the time, you know. It's a bit like sitting on a branch and sawing it, but you're sitting on the wrong side of the branch. And you're sawing it, you know. You're sitting on this side and the tree's there. And you're trying to make everything's fine. Pal, watch out. No, it's okay. Don't worry about me. I'm doing fine. You just carry on. I'm having a great time up here. It's all right. I'm on the wrong side, am I? Oh, okay, we'll see. And time's just going away like that, just eating away. So you have to make sure we're on the right side of the branch, and that we know what to do, how to prepare ourselves. We can't get it back. It's just slicing in, and sooner or later, that second hand will go to that final second bump, and that's it. Game over, finished. Move on now to the next thing, you know. And we've got a chance right now to do something about it. Animals don't have that chance. One animal drops dead, the other animals just carry on eating the grass, you know. I'll finish with this and ask for questions, okay? So this is a story in Aberdeen. I was doing Sankirtan and there were some pigeons, and one got run over by a bus, which sounded like a plastic bag that had been burst. And it was flat as a pancake, and I thought the other pigeons would say, "Goodness me, did you see that, Percy? I'm off." No. The pigeons went over to the corn that he'd been eating, and the corn was in various smaller sizes to the very smallest size, and they were just pecking away at the corn. And I thought, wow, they haven't clicked that their pal's just been flattened by a bus. It's just, oh, look, there's some corn. So that's the difference between animals and humans. You see that we're able to appreciate that that's a dangerous situation. Okay, so I'll finish. Any questions or comments? Nice little cherry story there, just to wake everybody up. You got a question, John? You look like you're pondering on something.
So just on that story of that example of the log, the tree, sawing the tree on the wrong side, it reminded me of a cartoon that a friend of mine sent me, a devotee. Chandra, and it's two people in a kind of caught in a space which is surrounded by a very high wall, and not too high to jump over or climb over, and they've got one ladder which is high enough to get over the wall, and they're actually so every day they saw off one of the rungs of the ladder and use it to light a fire to cook their food. And it's coming to the stage where it's too high for them to reach the next rung. So it's a little bit like that. So yesterday I was attending a webinar about the impact of climate change on the Scottish nation, and people were asked to say which impact. There was 15 different ways that some analysts categorised the ways in which climate change is going to adversely impact the Scottish nation. None of them were really life-threatening, but and so for that reason, it seemed like it wasn't a serious thing, because it was being analysed from just the situation of the person's immediate environment. They weren't being encouraged to see the bigger picture, at the end of the analysis, the question was asked: are there any things which you feel were under stressed? So one person said he was amazed that no one was analysing the global perspective and how the catastrophic events globally were bound to catastrophically affect all of the world.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? We look at things globally, and then we can look at things cosmologically, that we're in the middle planetary system of 14 planetary systems in Kali Yuga, which takes place 1,000 times in the day of Brahma, and that the devas are the ones that need to be appeased to release facilities like jewels and minerals and nourishing crops. So could you imagine standing up and saying, well, let's just forget Scotland for a second, and has anyone done a yogi for Indra lately? What are you talking about, Indra? Which country is he from? No, he's from a different planet. He's from a higher planet. He's a very powerful demigod. Yeah? So their grasp of what's going on and how to deal with what's going on is very, very, very limited. And they have very little understanding. And it's such an egotistical thing. We are the ones in control of what's going on. When things go wrong, that's because we've done it, and therefore we're the ones that are going to put things straight. We're the ones, it's us, we are the ones, but it's that whole egocentric perspective which is wrong. You know, okay, look, the earth is a living organism, for goodness sake, you know. She's a personality. You need to start treating her like a person. That would be a big improvement. Try and see that the planet is alive, and then try and see that there's other things other than humans in this universe that are conscious entities, and that we're not the most advanced ones. I mean, is that too hard to get your head around? You know, when they jump in the Starship Enterprise and they go flying off, right? It's life-changing, but not life as we know it. You know, something's going to be a lot bigger than you and a lot cleverer than you. Is that too hard to get your head around, for goodness sake? Can you not just think that that's maybe a possibility? And if it is, and there are, then maybe they have an effect on what's going on around us. Maybe they're not happy sometimes with the way that we're conducting ourselves. Maybe we have to behave ourselves and act in accord with what nature would like from us. And then everyone will be happy. And that's a huge jump, isn't it, to go? It's like someone comes up and says they're a vegan. If you're going to show them that drinking milk is okay, you've got to go through a whole thing of, well, there is a Supreme Personality of Godhead, he does drink milk, he does have cows, he does live in the spirit, and it's like, a person's going to think, well, I don't know whether I want to believe in all that, I just know that this is cruel, and that's as far as it goes. But to get them from there into this other, it's a huge jump. It's the same with trying to sort out climate change or any problems that are going on, and you're thinking, okay, well, how much solution can they take? Because how much have they got a grip of what the problem is in the first place?
I mean, the most graphic example of it yesterday was that, you know, it's going to like seriously damage the whiskey industry. You know, like because there's going to be it's going to be slightly drier in the summer in Scotland and slightly wetter in the winter, and this is going to affect the barley crop. And there's 40,000 people in Scotland who are like depend on the whiskey industry.
Yeah.
You know, and it provides like £7 billion to the Scottish economy. You know, as if that's really going to matter much. You know, once the world's on fire or whatever.
It's such a crippled world view, isn't it? What's going on? Basically, I won't be getting as much whiskey, or the whiskey will go up in price, or it's like my mother was. She doesn't usually go on there, so she was saying, "Oh, Tony, the pandemic is terrible, Tony. I can't get my hair done." I can't get my hair done. It's been look at the state of it, Billy. Look at my hair. Well, you know, it's like, okay. So that's what you're dealing with, you see. And people there's all these people in these little bubbles, and that's their universe. You know? That's as far as it goes. And it's amazing. I remember when I was first listening to the Bhagavatam, and it's so big, the whole thing that's going on, the weapons and the fighting and the intrigues, it's all just so big and out with your normal kind of itsy-bitsy existence. And it was kind of great because it makes you realise this is all really so insignificant. What's going on, you know, we can just expand and see the bigger picture. There's 1,000 Kali Yugas in one day of Lord Brahma. Imagine running up to Lord Brahma and saying, Lord Brahma! And he turns around and says, yeah, what's there's a pandemic and Carol can't get her hair done. And it's like, by the time he looks around, Carol's finished, and half another 500 Kali Yugas have just passed, and he says, what was that? Oh, she's somewhere else. I mean, how fast must it look? If you're looking at 1,000 Kali Yugas, and you're looking, Lord Brahma went away for a moment, right, and came back. So how fast must it look? It must be like watching ants, like on turbocharged. And every now and again a little ant goes, I've got a grain of sugar, yay! And he's gone, I got a grain of sugar, yay! Nothing, is it? And that's him winning the lottery. It's nothing.
For a lot of people who are not like God conscious or didn't have any kind of understanding within those circles, it sounds very simplistic. Just love Krishna, and that will satisfy all your needs, and not only yours. This is gonna help the whole planet. So I have to explain that to people.
Well, it's simple and it's also very intricate because I'll give you an example of how intricate it is actually. There was a man who used to have an argument with his wife every day, and what he used to do was pull a gun up and say, I can't stand you any longer, I'm just going to blow your head off. He was from America. And she'd say, you just try, you wouldn't dare do that to me, and I tell you, you get in this time of night, we've got no money in the bank. And so the son upstairs was getting that fed up with it. He put a bullet in the gun, because he used to pull the trigger, but it was always unloaded. I'm going to blow your head up, and go like that, So his son put on he loaded the gun with bullets, basically. He was waiting. There'd be the argument every day. He was waiting for the band. And the band, in fact, what happened was that the son became so frustrated. He was waiting for over a week, and for suddenly, they've been doing it for years, and suddenly he wasn't using the gun. So his son decided he'd had enough. This is a true story, by the way. His son had decided he'd had enough, so you know what he did? He jumped out the window and committed suicide. And the funny thing was, on that day, his father picked up the gun and pulled the trigger, but the bullet went over his wife's shoulder, through the window, and hit his son on the way down. So when people say, oh, it's really simple, you just love Krishna, you say, well, actually, that's how intricate karma is. That's how, and that's another reason why they find it hard to get their head around it. Not a blade of grass moves without the sanction of God, not a blade of grass. So all those microbes in between the bullet and hitting that kid, that was also allotted. Those particular ones got hit by the bullet at that particular time. That's how infinitely intricate everything is arranged. And so they're the ones that have this simplistic idea because it suits them, and they call that chance or coincidence because they don't want to accept that there's some kind of higher ramifications to what's going on around them. Einstein called it the pain wave theory, and the pain wave theory is that when you kill an animal, those shocks of pain go into the earth, and if you do it enough times, it causes an earthquake. Which is what happened in Nepal after they killed all those 220,000 buffalo. There was a massive earthquake straight out. It's called the pain wave theory. That's how intricate things are. You interfere, then there'll be ramifications. And it's very, very intricate. It's very complicated. Every breath of air you're drawing, depending on the consciousness that you're in, will determine what type of reaction you get for killing those microbes. That's why the Baha'is, isn't it? They have a mask over their face. The Jains, they have a mask over their face to avoid breathing in microbes and killing them. So that's like an ultra vegan, isn't it? Total 100% doesn't want to harm anybody. And then you could even decide you're going to be such a strict vegan that you're going to wear a jetpack and you only go from A to B if you can levitate over to it, because you don't just step on an ant on the way, just in case you do. So you find a hardcore vegan if he's hovering off the ground 6 inches, because he's got some kind of jetpack that keeps him. So they simplify things to suit themselves. Oh well, there can't be a God. We can do what we like. Everything just exploded into existence. There's an interesting book. I don't know what it's called right now, but he worked out, he was a really super ingenious guy. If you have a room with 100 monkeys in, pressing typewriters at random, eventually they will come up with a code for DNA. But he worked out that it would take longer than the universe is old, because they say the universe is 13.5 million years old. And they say it would take longer than that for 100 monkeys on typewriters to come up with the beginning of life. So the universe isn't old enough. It's only 13.5 million years. You need like a few trillion years of the universe being around to have something happen like that by chance. So he proved mathematically that wasn't actually possible. So they'll say chance is a fob off because they don't understand. They'll say coincidence. One time Govindadasi was saying, Prabhupada was saying, why are the birds flying like that? Yesterday I was watching, and there was all these ducks flying in V formation. And there was loads of them. I've never seen that before, where there's one V, and another V, and another V, and another V, and another one. And they were all going like that. Prabhupada was saying, how are they doing that? And Govindadasi said, instinct. And Prabhupada said, what does it mean? What does that mean? Instinct. They use fancy words because they don't understand what it means. It means super soul. Something's directing them. When they say coincidence, what does it mean? It means there's some arrangement there by the Lord. When they say by chance, what does that mean? We never use it. It's never used. You cannot use it. You couldn't say, we're going to take a Bunsen burner, some hydrochloric acid, and by chance, we're going to see if it falls into this container. What are you going to put it in the container? Are you not going to put it in the container? Well, we're just going to leave it up to chance. You just don't do it, do you? And suddenly we use this word chance. We don't like using the word God, intelligent design, super soul, superior arrangement. So we pull those out and stick these words in instead to try and cover up our ignorance. We don't really know what it is, you see. So that's to hide the fact. To try and make myself sound like I'm intelligent, I just give you the name. It's called a punctuated equilibrium. And punctuated equilibrium is, see, it's not actually possible for an eye to happen by chance, because you have to transit from a light-sensitive cell to an apparatus with an optic nerve, a retina, and then the processing mechanism for turning that into understandable data inside the brain. And you don't go from a light-sensitive cell to an eye that can focus and adjust to light by just one thing going wrong. Because if one thing goes wrong, if someone's walking around with 2 light-sensitive cells, what's wrong with them? Well, he had a freak mutation and he's bumping into everything right now. But he says if you give him a couple of million years, he'll eventually get through the door because it'll turn into an eye. So punctuated equilibrium is that by chance, one day there was a mutation and it formed an optic nerve, it formed a lens on the eye, it formed a retina, and it formed the apparatus in the brain to receive the light information and process it into an image, all at the same time. So, if we say that, they'll think it's a load of rubbish. So why don't we call it punctuated equilibrium? Oh yeah, well, punctuated equilibrium. It sounds like he knows what he's talking about. So that's what it must be, punctuated equilibrium. It's just total nonsense, and they're getting away with it. They're ripping people off, basically. There's 4 tendencies, and they're imperfect, make mistakes, subject to illusion. But the worst one, the last result for a scoundrel, is if they can't do it any other way, well, let's just cheat them now. Let's just cheat them. They don't understand anymore what we're talking about. As long as we show them a load of formulas, we can cheat them. So that's what they do. I'll finish there. ISKCON Guru in the key. Go, people.
Jai.